David had been saved from his own anger by a wise woman named Abigail. He had shown mercy to Saul twice in the wilderness. But the long pursuit was nearing its end, not because David struck his enemy down, but because the Philistines were gathering for war. After years of running, David made a desperate choice. He crossed into Philistine territory and pledged himself to Achish, king of Gath. This time he did not feign madness. He asked for a place to live. Achish gave him Ziklag, a town on the border. David stayed there 16 months, raiding southern tribes and telling Achish he was raiding Judah. He left no survivors who could contradict his story. It was a dark season. David survived by deception among Israel's enemies. Then the Philistines assembled their forces for war against Israel. Achish said to David, "You must understand that you and your men will accompany me in the army." David answered, "Then you will see for yourself what your servant can do." But the Philistine commanders saw David marching with Achish and protested. "What about these Hebrews?" they demanded. Achish defended David. "Is this not David, who was an officer of Saul, king of Israel? He has already been with me for over a year, and from the day he left Saul until now, I have found no fault in him." But the commanders were angry. "Send the man back," they said. "He must return to the place you assigned him. He must not go with us into battle, or he will turn against us during the fighting. How better could he regain his master's favor than by taking the heads of our own men?" Achish called David. "As surely as the Lord lives, you have been reliable, and I would be pleased to have you serve with me in the army. From the day you came to me until today, I have found no fault in you. But the rulers do not approve of you. Go back peacefully. Do nothing to displease the Philistine rulers." So David and his men set out early in the morning to go back to the land of the Philistines. And the Philistines went up to Jezreel. When David and his men reached Ziklag on the third day, they found it destroyed. The Amalekites had raided the Negev and Ziklag. They had burned it and taken captive the women and everyone else, but they had not killed anyone. David and his men saw the smoking ruins. Their wives, sons, and daughters were gone. David and his men wept aloud until they had no strength left to weep. David's two wives, Ahinoam and Abigail, had been captured. Then something worse happened. David was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him. Each one was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters. But David found strength in the Lord his God. He called for the priest Abiathar. "Bring me the ephod," he said. David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I pursue this raiding party? Will I overtake them?" The answer came, "Pursue them. You will certainly overtake them and succeed in the rescue." David and 600 men set out. At the Besor Valley, 200 were too exhausted to cross and stayed behind. David and 400 continued. They found an Egyptian in a field. He was near death from hunger and thirst. They revived him with food and water. David asked, "Who do you belong to? Where do you come from?" The man answered, "I am an Egyptian, the slave of an Amalekite. My master abandoned me when I became ill 3 days ago. We raided the Negev of the Kerethites, some territory belonging to Judah, and the Negev of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag." David asked, "Can you lead me down to this raiding party?" The man said, "Swear to me before God that you will not kill me or hand me over to my master, and I will take you down to them." David gave his oath. The Egyptian led them to the Amalekite camp. The raiders were scattered over the countryside, eating, drinking, and celebrating because of the great amount of plunder they had taken. David fought them from dusk until the evening of the next day. Not a man escaped except 400 young men who rode off on camels and fled. David recovered everything. Nothing was missing, young or old, boy or girl, plunder or anything they had taken. He brought back his 2 wives. He brought back all the families of his men, and he brought back all the flocks and herds. His men drove the livestock ahead of the other plunder and said, "This is David's plunder." David returned to the 200 men who had stayed at the Besor Valley. Some of his men complained, "Because they did not go out with us, we will not share the plunder with them. Each man may take his wife and children and go." David answered, "No, my brothers, you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and delivered into our hands the raiding party that came against us. Who will listen to what you say? The share of the man who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as that of him who went down to the battle. All will share alike." David made this a statute and ordinance for Israel from that day forward. But while David was pursuing the Amalekites, the Philistines were fighting Israel at Mount Gilboa. The battle pressed hard against Saul. The archers wounded him critically. Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and run me through, or these uncircumcised fellows will come and run me through and abuse me." But the armor-bearer was terrified and would not do it, so Saul took his own sword and fell on it. When the armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell on his sword and died with him. So Saul and his 3 sons, Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, and his armor-bearer and all his men died together that day. When the Israelites along the valley and across the Jordan saw that the army had fled and that Saul and his sons had died, they abandoned their towns and fled, and the Philistines came and occupied them. The next day, when the Philistines came to strip the dead, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head and stripped off his armor. They sent messengers throughout the land of the Philistines to proclaim the news in the temple of their idols and among their people. They put his armor in the temple of the Ishtarethos and fastened his body to the wall of Beth-shan. But when the people of Jabesh-Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, their valiant men marched through the night, took down the bodies of Saul and his sons from the wall of Beth-shan, and brought them to Jabesh. There they burned them. Then they took their bones and buried them under a tamarisk tree, and they fasted 7 days. A messenger arrived in Ziklag with torn clothes and dust on his head. He came to David and fell to the ground. "Where have you come from?" David asked. "I have escaped from the Israelite camp," he answered. "What happened?" David asked. "Tell me." The man answered, "The men fled from the battle. Many of them fell and died. And Saul and his son Jonathan are dead." "How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead?" The man said, "He had come upon Saul leaning on his spear, with the chariots and riders almost upon him. Saul had asked the man to kill him. The man claimed to have done so, believing Saul could not survive his wounds. He had taken the crown and the band from Saul's arm and brought them to David. David tore his clothes. So did all the men with him. They mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and his son Jonathan, and for the army of the Lord, and for the nation of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. David asked the young man who had brought the news, "Where are you from?" "I am the son of a foreigner, an Amalekite," he said. David asked, "Why were you not afraid to lift your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" He called one of his men. "Strike him down." The man killed him. David said, "Your blood be on your own head. Your own mouth testified against you when you said, 'I killed the Lord's anointed.'" Whether the Amalekite story was true or not, David would not let the claim go unpunished. The Lord's anointed was still the Lord's anointed, even in death. Then David took up a lament for Saul and Jonathan. "Your glory, O Israel, lies slain on your heights. How the mighty have fallen! Tell it not in Gath. Proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines be glad, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised rejoice. Mountains of Gilboa, may you have neither dew nor rain, nor fields that yield grain offerings. For there the shield of the mighty was despised, the shield of Saul, no longer rubbed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the flesh of the mighty, The bow of Jonathan did not turn back. The sword of Saul did not return unsatisfied. Saul and Jonathan. In life they were loved and admired, and in death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. Daughters of Israel, weep for Saul, who clothed you in scarlet and finery, who adorned your garments with ornaments of gold. How the mighty have fallen in battle! Jonathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women. How the mighty have fallen! The weapons of war have perished. The man who hunted David was dead. The friend who loved him was gone. The wilderness years were over, but what came next was not triumph. It was grief. In the next episode, David will